This is the startupsdilse podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Do us a favor, like, subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn, and be sure to give us your feedback. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to wherever you're joining us from. This is Anthony Prakash, your host from startupsdilse. Today, I bring to you a brand new episode of the podcast, and I'm super excited to welcome Tope Alabi, who is the co-founder and CEO of Afriex, which is a remittance platform. And Tope and his co-founder John built this through a stint at YCombinator. Remittances, as many of you might know, is a big problem around the world for people, especially immigrants, to send back money back to their country. As although that industry has evolved quite a bit, there are still parts of the world where it is still very difficult. And I'm so glad I found Tope and his company Afriex trying to do this for Africa. As someone who's been through this pain firsthand, I really appreciate Tope and his company doing this. So first of all, without further ado, Tope, welcome to the show. So glad you took the time to come on here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Tope, why don't we kick us off today and tell the world about who you are, where you come from, and maybe a little about Afriex. Of course, we'll focus this conversation a lot about Afriex, the problem, and how you're solving for. But we'd love to know more about you as a person and what got you to this point.
Yeah, never really imagining, what turns my life would take. Came to me and said, it was like a Monday, and she's like, "Oh, on Thursday we're moving to America." I was like, literally, I remember like going to the playground at school and just like standing there. I stopped playing. I was just looking around like, I'll never see these people again, and just being a kid and it just being like a really big moment for me as a child. So 9 years old,
wow.
My family won something called the Visa Lottery.
Yeah.
Visa Lottery is where the U.S. sort of like gives free visas to some poor country, and Nigeria was poor enough at the time, and we qualified, and my family won. Moved to America on that Thursday. I remember landing in Houston, Texas, and everything smelled like plastic. I was, watching wrestling and eating hot dogs like every other American kid. And so, moved over when I was a kid and kept, I was very focused on academics as a kid. I studied engineering. Also played a little bit of sports, but I was mostly academic. And I ended up studying engineering. Went to university and studied electrical engineering.
Nice.
Much more like computer chips, hardware, circuits, electronics. But I never actually worked as an electrical engineer. As soon as I'm sure it's a common thing, but as soon as I graduated, I pretty much went straight into software. I went to work at Wix.com for a little while, software engineer. Then I worked at IDEO, which is a consulting firm. And I also worked at Consensus, which is a blockchain consulting firm as well. And in between that, I would dabble a little bit. I was always working on projects, always curious and working on new ideas. But those were my, I would say, probably major work experiences.
Okay, awesome. And fascinating story, right? So you get told on a Monday and you move on a Thursday. Do you still remember the exact date as to when it happened? I mean, one for the memory books, yeah?
Yeah, May 27th, 1998.
Okay.
And we landed in Houston, and, it was obviously a big impact on my life. Things, obviously, a full circle, because now I run a Africa-focused FinTech. But yeah, at that time, it was, a whole new world and new experience for me.
Okay. That is incredible. And so if I may ask you, I mean, after all that time, almost 20 years, what made you choose to go back to your home country and run what you're doing right now?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's the same story that a lot of immigrant kids share this. You grow up as an immigrant kid, and you always want.
Yeah.
And I was one of those kids. I always kind of knew that I would do something. And I think my parents, my mother kind of raised us that way. My mother was very entrepreneurial herself. Always had a business. She had a beauty salon. She sold cars. My mother has pretty much done every business that you can imagine. And so we grew up watching that. And she also kind of bred in us that, you were lucky to get this opportunity. And so you should pay that forward to the next generation and to the people that weren't so lucky. And I think that was something that kind of stuck with us, myself and my sisters as well. And so I would say, that is probably a good part of the motivation that kind of brought me back.
Salute to our moms, right? I mean, they play such a big role in our lives, and we can't do enough to thank them for all the stuff that they do in our lives. So let's talk about Afriex a little bit, Tope. Right? So you said you worked in a bunch of companies after you did your electrical engineering. So where did you actually first feel the pain that, okay, this is a problem and this is something that you should go solve for? How did that starting point happen?
Honestly, my journey into Afriex specifically really came from an engineering standpoint. Building all these really cool blockchain solutions at that time. And, I worked on a lot of cool things. And I always thought to myself, like, well, it feels like there's something here that could be helpful for people with inflationary currencies. And so, I was kind of dabbling in my mind. It hadn't really clicked. Stablecoins hadn't really taken off at the time. It was really mostly crypto. People were using just buying Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that was a lot of the activity at that time. And so consensus was, very early in the remote work trend. And so I really had the opportunity to travel around. I actually got a chance to travel to Lagos. And so I started traveling back to Nigeria from San Francisco at that time. And so here I was in Lagos. My co-founder, John, and I were just kind of playing around different ideas. At some point, we actually built like a Bitcoin exchange. And we basically realized that no one was holding, at least the people in Africa, they were buying it and like sending it and kind of using it as a payment system. And we were like, oh, wow, this is interesting. We would talk to our customers, hey, why did you buy that Bitcoin? They're like, oh, I wanted to make a payment in Germany. Oh, interesting. And so we decided to just double down on the remittance and payments use case with the idea that we would use crypto as a backend. And then all of a sudden you saw the rise of stablecoins, and it just became much more simple, right? Like instead of me trying to buy Bitcoin and, it might go up and down, I can just buy stablecoin, maintain the value, and then, deliver value for my customer. So that started working well. And then over time, as we got bigger, even the stablecoins became sort of like less necessary in our system, but still useful. I think in general, and we can touch on this more later, but I think in general, the world is moving to like an instant payment system. And that's probably the big trend that a lot of people aren't talking about, is that not just in the blockchain space, but even in the fiat space, payments are just getting faster globally. And so you have new entrants like ourselves who are taking advantage of these technologies and bringing them to the customer to just provide a more seamless payment experience.
Got it. That is beautiful. And you did mention your co-founder, John, right? Where did you actually run into John, and how did you guys decide to team up?
John, so Afriex is like, a lot of our early stories start like online. Right?
Yeah.
So John met online.
Oh, nice.
We met online. There was like I think Facebook had an online hackathon, like a Facebook developer conference. There was a hackathon online, and I won. I like
nice.
out, I don't know, thousands of. I used to experiment a lot with technology, and John saw that I won. He reached out to congratulate a fellow Nigerian that won this global thing, And just through that conversation, we were just checking out each other's projects. Like, oh, what have you built? Oh, I built this other thing, this dev tool. And so we were just kind of comparing notes, and then we're like, you know what? We should just work together on whatever's next. And so it was almost kind of like a hobbyist, I would say, kind of shared interest. And then over time, we kind of started getting more serious.
Okay, very nice. So it's really fascinating to hear the stories of co-founders in general, right? I mean, a lot of them know each other for their entire lifetime. A lot of them say, "Oh, you know what? He or she was sitting next to me on the plane. We started talking ideas. We became co-founders." So I'd love to know the stories of how you actually run into one another. So so is John also based in Lagos right now, or he's
So
okay?
Afriex is a remote company. I'll say
Yeah.
hybrid remote. So we have sort of clusters of people in various cities. We have a cluster in Lagos, cluster in Nairobi, Kenya, and another major cluster, I would say, in the UK. John these days spends a lot of time in Nairobi, Kenya. Over the years, he spent time in Brazil. John just kind of lives in that
Okay.
place for a year and then he goes somewhere else.
Okay, that's the 2024 lifestyle. So I'm glad he's doing that. So let's maybe unravel a little bit more of Afriex as well, right? So you saw the problem, and you said, okay, let's go tackle this. So from what made you guys choose the YCombinator path for Afriex to start with, and then talk to us a little bit about where you are in your journey. I see that you're almost hitting 500,000 subscribers and users from around the world. So congratulations on that. So just talk about the journey in general and where you are right now.
Yeah. Just to double click on the problem, right? So I mentioned that our customers were using it as a payment system. We
Yeah.
also had to pay ourselves. So like all of my money was in the US and I had to keep using the money in my US bank account to pay for my Nigerian expenses. And so from both angles, we were seeing like, hey, this cross-border thing is like a real problem.
Yeah.
It was just too expensive and too slow. And so basically we decided to focus on that and build around that. And so we were doing this. I was living in San Francisco before moving to Lagos. So I had like a San Francisco network. And so YCombinator had always been sort of this legendary place where great companies had come out of. And so honestly, I didn't think a whole lot about it until we applied. I didn't necessarily think we would even get in, to be honest with you. It was just one of those moments where, we had been working on a project and we had like, a little bit of traction, and we were just like, guys, what are we going to do? We need to like raise some money. And we were like, at that time, there were only four of us. It was myself, John, and two other engineers, Valentine and Ernest. So just four engineers basically working on a project. Little bit of traction, and everyone's looking around like, hey, like what's next? And so I was like, all right, guys, you know what? Let's just apply for some accelerator programs, see if we get in. We applied for Techstars and didn't get in. And then we applied for YC, which we assumed would be harder, and we were like, oh well, I guess if we didn't get in Techstars, we might not get in YC. And we actually got in. We got into YC, and it was like really exciting. Again, this was around the pandemic time, so early to mid 2020, really put a bolt of electricity into the company. I would say for me, that's the biggest value that YC provided us. It wasn't the money, because whatever what they give to these days, maybe 150 or whatever it is, or I think they give probably more now. Generally, you don't get it. You're not going to get it on day one, right?
Yeah.
Like you get into the accelerator, it's probably going to take a while for you to even get that money. But what it gives you is that energy as a young startup, like, oh, we have a chance. And so everyone is like giving it everything they got. It just creates a really intense moment and surrounds you with other startups that are also moving at the same pace. So it was great for us, I think, in that we probably made more money from that than the actual money that they gave us, right? So it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And how big is your team now? I mean, you said you were four then. I mean, I maybe your website it says 50 people. Is that right?
Sure. So today we're 75 people.
Congrats.
I'm really proud to say that all of those four guys are still at the company.
Very
And
nice.
so earnest the next few years.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. I mean, so cool, and I mean, and I wish that you can expand this globally, right? I mean, from what I see, you're concentrating a lot on where you came from and the countries around Nigeria in general, but I also see a few other countries. So is that the goal? I mean, do you see this as a global challenge for people to send from point A to point B, and your grander vision is to say, I mean, treat almost the world as one entity, and make this super easy and instantaneous for everyone. I mean, I'm probably putting words in your mouth here, but just talk to us about what you thought is a starting point, and maybe in your journey, what's that grander vision for Afriex?
Yeah, yeah. Cross-border payments are now.
Yeah.
Even today, we connect to countries in Southeast Asia. We connect to Europe, obviously. So we actually, I think 40 now. Sorry, there was a new release, and we are getting ready to launch some Caribbean endpoints. And so naturally, this is a globally connected payment network that we're building.
Yeah.
We started with an audience that is African and African diaspora, and from there we will naturally expand out. So, for example, throughout from when we started to where we are, we've built a lot of new products. We've also started serving B2B clients, and so there's naturally, I think, in the life of a company, you just find yourself expanding to new and newer places. And so, what we're trying to do is not get too far ahead of our skis. Focus on what's in hand, while also continuing to build out the global network.
Okay, got it. And just in terms of you moving back to Nigeria, you are in Lagos right now. So I'm part of an open source community called Flutter, and I know for a fact that that community is thriving. The developer community in general is thriving in Africa, especially in Lagos, where I see a lot of traction. Yeah, but I know very little about just the startup ecosystem in general in Nigeria. What excites you most about you going back, setting up shop there, and can you tell the world about Nigeria in general and the startup ecosystem that you're part of?
Yeah. So I've gotten to see a few startup ecosystems. Obviously, I did the San Francisco. Say major differences. I think the founders here are a lot clear problems with direct revenue opportunities.
Yeah.
So, I really appreciate that, because what it does is everyone is speaking from a real place with real customers and real experiences. The startup ecosystem is very interconnected. Lagos has a high population, but it's not geographically large, so it's actually very, very dense.
Dense.
So everyone knows each other. Every people have worked at different companies and now work for a new company, and so there's a very tight-knit community, definitely, where everyone is kind of working together. Everyone has impact goals, right? Everyone is trying to boost the continent in some way or the other. And so it's been, for me, very enjoyable. I sit in an interesting part of the ecosystem where, I've gotten opportunities to live in other places, and we've raised a good amount of money and stuff and so forth. And I see folks that are ahead of us. I see folks that are coming up sort of behind us. And, I'm very excited. I think Lagos has a lot to contribute to the world, especially in the financial services space.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, very, very excited and impressed about what I see here.
Beautiful. So yeah, you mentioned you worked on blockchain before Afriex, and a lot of the crypto exchanges and those sort of ideas. I'm assuming, based on what you said, the underlying tech for Afriex, you've also used a lot of those principles from my assumption might be incorrect, but I mean, what sort of approach did you take to make the tech super simple? Number one. Number two is to your point. I mean, if it's a global exchange, if you will, and it needs to cross-border payments, needs to be instantaneous and all that. How have you ensured, Tope, that the tech that you're using is like cutting edge and it'll stand the test of time, if you will?
Yeah. The technology is, I would say, first of all, anyone building consumer payments, it's it's a high bar technology, right? Because you're dealing with people's money and lots of people at the same time. And so I don't care if I've completed every transaction for you for the last 10 years, that one that doesn't go through is like the world is ending, right? And so for that reason, there's a very, very high bar for reliability and functionality. And so you really have to build around that and make sure that every digit is accounted for, and everything happens exactly how it's supposed to happen as often as possible. And so I'll say that's really the main design principle. As far as like the comparison or like the influence of blockchain technologies, I think that happens more so on the operational side for a lot of companies. So from a technology standpoint, building an exchange is very different from building a payment system. And what we've built is more of a payment system, a really fast payment system that integrates with a lot of global networks, card systems, mobile money systems, bank account systems. But that is also, I would say, still different from like a proper exchange. Even, whether you're talking about Binance or like NASDAQ or any sort of like real-time, those systems are technologically, I would say, quite different, but they can integrate to it. And so what we've built is basically a really fast payment system that enables people to move value around the world, like literally in seconds.
Okay. You spoke about the high bar there. I totally understand, right? I mean, it is people's hard-earned money, and you got to be super careful with it. So, I mean, with those expectations come a big responsibility as well, right? Like our friend Spider-Man says, right? So you're building a company. You've grown from 4 people to 75 people right now. So, I mean, I think, from at least my vantage point, I mean, that's a culture you need to build. I mean, everyone needs to take that seriously, that, you're dealing with people's livelihoods in a way, right? So, I mean, as a CEO, Tope, maybe wear your CEO's hat. I mean, what are those principles and values or foundational principles rather, that you're building Afriex on? And I mean, what is it that you keep stressing to your team, or what sort of culture have you built, and what you want to build rather for the company?
Yeah, I think the means a lot of things for a lot of different people, but it basically for us means unity, because we have everyone is a problem solver, right? Like customers call with problems, you need to solve it, and you need to solve it for them fast, because we're not in a world where, like in the old times where somebody sends money and they're expecting it to land in 3 days. And so you can pass them off to the next department to handle it and like move them through at Afriex, like everyone, it's very flat and horizontal. Everyone pretty much understands how the business works, and everyone pretty much understands where to find things. So if there's a problem, you're responsible for solving that problem. It's not enough to say, oh, I emailed somebody about it or whatever. You kind of have to do it. And so I think what that breeds in us is a lot of empathy for the customer, because when a customer has an issue or a challenge, we take it on. Like, I need to solve it. I'm the one that needs to solve it for this person. And so I'd say that is like the primary culture that we kind of take on. We see a problem, we kind of roll up our sleeves and take personal responsibility to solve those problems. And I think it's helped us, even when we moved from consumer space to now serving more businesses, it helped us a lot in that way. Some people from our team will call our partners on a weekend, and be like, I noticed this thing on your system. How can we work together to make this connection better? And people are surprised, why? Because that's just how we are. It's we sort of take personal responsibility to solve problems.
Yeah, I love it because it gives them a sense of ownership, accountability at the same time, right? And in a way, it's also empowering them, saying, you know what, I should be able to do it. So you're kind of hitting all three of those birds in one shot with that, right? So nicely done, Tope. The next piece, I was curious about as to the app itself, right? Me being an immigrant as well. I've used plenty of these apps. A lot of these things, the setup time is long. Yes, things have changed over the years. So, can you tell us a little bit about, how long it takes for somebody to sign up on Afriex and make that first transaction? How easy or simple have you made it?
Super easy and super simple, of course. We came from, these apps were charging 7%, taking, same day. If it was same day, that was a miracle. Oh my God. I remember those first payments would literally take hours, and I was happy about it. Now at Afriex, 90% of payments arrive in 2 seconds. So
wow.
If a payment does not arrive in 2 seconds, it's almost on our bad list. What did we do wrong? You know what I mean? And so that's a very, very different world. And so we take that into consideration, whether it's from verification standpoint to the payment standpoint. We want to make everything as fast and simple as possible. The other thing that I would add is we're now moving into a new generation of cross-border payments. I would say the first generation was the Western Unions and the MoneyGrams of the world, right? Send money, it's going to get there in 5 days. We're going to charge you $20 to send $100. Second generation was TransferWise, World Remit. So now it's mobile, right? Now we've digitized it, but it's not necessarily cheaper, or it is, but maybe we're not charging you $20. Now we're charging you $6, and it's going to get there in 8 hours, something like that. That was the case, I would say, shortly before this new generation joined. Now, this new generation is not only super fast and easier, but also we're starting to see more features, more parts of the financial life. We're now building not just a remittance platform, but something that really encompasses an immigrant's entire financial life. So, for example, Afriex also enables people to generate USD bank accounts.
Nice.
So not only can you send money, but you can actually open up a bank account. And we do this for immigrants in North America and Europe, and remote workers in Africa. And so we're enabling sort of a push remittance from the immigrant and a pull remittance from the remote worker, giving people access to foreign accounts, allowing them to send money quickly in directions that they've never been able to before. So basically, we're starting to see a much more, this is a much more advanced sort of cross-border payment ecosystem springing up.
Yeah, nicely done. I'm glad to hear all these new features, and with the internet changing every day, and customer demands and needs for speed, and the world itself just compressing so much, or we're all global citizens, right? So we want that flexibility. So cool to see that you're doing this. So given your success so far, Tope, what is next? Are you guys doing any sort of fundraising? How can people in the community and people listening to this help Afriex?
Yeah, first of all, most of the things there, I'll say, pretty simply, so very excited about what that's going to enable on the platform for all of our customers globally. As far as interacting with the ecosystem, we're not like actively raising, but I'm, always in touch and speaking to investors. I like to. One of the things that I think has changed about me as a founder from when we first started to now is like I now see everyone as a stakeholder or a customer in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Investors, competitors, regulators, the customer, like everyone. It's my job to make sure that everyone is aligned for the success of the mission, right? And so that includes everyone. And so, we do spend a good amount of time talking to investors, learning from them, sharing some of our plans, and a lot of times they might have seen examples of this in Latin America, or they might have seen an example of this in Europe or something like that. And so we can sort of compare notes and figure out how we can work together to build a better future.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you're doing as a CEO. I mean, and it looks like, you're the type of CEO who is plugged into everything that goes on, especially given the culture that you've built and your org structure. And as a CEO, a lot of what you do is actually just talk, right? I mean, your calendars are usually filled up, and you've got to be talking to either internally or externally, do a lot of talking, right? So I don't blame you for that.
It's weird, man, because I'm an engineer in my background, and sometimes I want to like roll up my sleeves, but I realize a lot of times it's just communicating the ideas and letting other people add their input. And so, yeah, you're right. I'm literally just responding.
Yeah, perfect. So we reached the section of the episode, Tope, where I'm going to fire away a few questions, rapid fire sort of thing. I think some of this you already answered, but you can choose to, add more to it. So first of all, you're like a first-time founder. Maybe you mentioned about your mom being your inspiration for being an entrepreneur herself. Anybody else that you look up to in your entrepreneurial journey as an inspiration?
She would have to be the number one inspiration.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that. We can move on. Yeah, beautiful. So, I'm sure your mom is proud of what you're doing, and especially going back home. And
I can just make a quick point. She's quite unique. Just to give you a sense, a lot of people are like, oh, my mom is great, but my mom actually. So I've seen her literally do it. So,
yeah,
she's she really lived the American dream, and I got to see it up close.
Beautiful. So, obviously, as an entrepreneur, you are an engineer. Now you're playing a role of a CEO. You spoke about all the nuances that come with the CEO. So you're learning a lot as well, right? So are you much of a reader, or are you more into documentaries to take inspiration? Anything you keep going back to help yourself as a CEO, Tope?
Yeah, it's been different things at different times. Definitely, you want to keep learning at all times. I would say it used to be a lot of books, now probably more. Yeah, today I listen to podcasts and watch videos.
Yeah, nice. So, if you were the Tope who figured out on a Monday that you got to go to the US on the Thursday, looking back at that journey, what would you tell that Tope from 1997, 1998? Have you arrived on the world scene, or any how would that Tope feel as to what this Tope is?
I don't know if I would tell him it, because I wouldn't want to stress him out. I don't know if he would have been ready for what's to come. But I would just have told myself to stay focused. I probably would have dropped a few hints, that might have accelerated a few things. But in general, just kind of focus on your strengths. Focus on your strengths, and just continue to develop that, because every single person has like supreme talent inside them, and you just got to figure out what that is and hone in on that.
Awesome, Tope. So cool to have you on the show. Thanks so much for taking the time amidst your super busy schedule. I'm so glad I got you on. and I'm gonna try Afriex myself and see how it works. So I'll pass on any feedback that I have. But
Thanks for
awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.